I think we're gonna get started. Welcome. Oh my God, I didn't do it again. Okay, sorry. If you guys saw me furiously typing, I lost my notes like 2 minutes before we started. So I'm like, ah! Anyway, helps. Hi, I'm Stacey Jill Calvert. I am normally the Film Fest coordinator, programmer person, but today I get to play moderator with this lovely group of people here. And welcome. Thank you guys for getting up so early. How many people were up? 2, 3, 4 in the morning? You're amazing. You're amazing. Amazing. Yes, including each and every one of you. Yeah, Naomi was like, "You're going to bed? What the hell? I just got here." So first off, I know I'm so excited to have all of you on the panel. I'll just tell you a brief thing. I was telling Naomi and Crystal this morning or last night. This panel started out as first-year staff writers, and then they're like, "Regina wants to be on a panel. Noelle wants to be on a panel." I'm like, "Okay. We're going to change this up." Cool. So very excited to have y'all here. First thing, what I want to do is please introduce yourselves and tell us a little about your background, what your show you're working on now, what you worked on, etc. So I'll go first.
My name is Noelle Carbone. I am a writer and producer from Toronto. I've worked Canada. I've worked on a bunch of shows: Rookie Blue, Saving Hope, and most recently Wynonna Earp.
Regina Hicks, based in Los Angeles. Recently off Insecure, now one of the exec producers on L Word.
Hi, I'm Naomi, and I am also based in Los Angeles. I had my first staff writer job on Damon Wayans Jr.'s sitcom on CBS last year, and right now I just started a new room. I'm on Lena Waithe's new show called 20s that is based on her life.
Hi, I am Crystal Banzon. I'm from Fontana, California, 909. Thank you. I was a first-time staff writer on Amy Poehler's new comedy on NBC, I Feel Bad.
All right, so I know we have a variety of experience up here, obviously, but I wanted to know, tell us about your journey as staff writer. Like, where did you start? Did you intend to become a writer? I know a lot of, like, I went to school for radio, TV, or whatever they called it way back when, and half the people that I went to school with are like yoga teachers now. So, so was this your intention? Was this the path that you thought you were going to go on when you first started out?
Oh, sorry. No, I just love television. So when I talked about, I'm from Savannah, Georgia, so me talking about moving to Los Angeles from when I was 9 seemed like crazy, but I never let it go. I went to summer camp to be a counselor right here right after my senior year of high school so that I could meet people, so that when I came back I would know people I could stay with. So I did that for like 2 summers. And then after college I came out to work at a summer camp in Hollywood called Camp Hollywoodland.
I love the name.
It's still there. It's in Griffith Park. It's great. And I stayed with a friend that I met at the other camp. So during the summer, one of the campers, her mom worked on a TV show. So
of course.
I did not believe her at first, and then her mom came to pick her up. I approached her and just said I was here looking for, trying to find work, but I didn't say what in, and the lady took her daughter and went home. And the camp director said, "That's ridiculous. You called," we went into her health records, got the woman's number at work. Super above board.
There were no HIPAA laws back there, right? No HIPAA laws.
It took me a week to call because I went through various emotions the first week out of camp. It's like, 1 week I was just hungover from the staff party. One day I was hungover from the staff party. The second day I went to UCLA to walk around to remember college. The third day I had a temp interview in Beverly Hills that I couldn't find, so I cried all the way back to Sylmar. That's where I was staying. Because I couldn't find it. I was like, I don't understand the city. Thursday, I just sat around watching soap operas and television because I was depressed. And I know my friend's mom was like, the camp's over, what's she doing? And then on Friday, I found that number and I wrote a little speech. And so I said it just because I knew if I just read it, I would get it all out. And it ended with, I just wanted to know if you knew of any avenues I might follow. then there was a big pause, and then she said, are you asking for a job? And I was like, do you have a job? So I became a PA in this. And then from being a PA, found an agent, and from that, that's why.
Fantastic.
So for me, I grew up in LA, and you would think that growing up in LA that writing for TV or film seems possible, but I grew up with immigrant parents. I just didn't feel like it was something that was a possibility for me because all of my parents, all of my family are, working class. I always felt like film and TV was maybe something that was out of my reach. But I went to UCLA for undergrad, studied poli-sci, and then after that I ended up working as a PA for a few years and production coordinator on more of the logistical business side. And then I decided I wanted to take the leap and go to USC for grad school, where I studied writing and directing. And while I was there, my final year, I saw this show, Transparent. And I was so moved by how honest and real and painful and funny that show was. And so I decided I wanted to go towards TV. So I started to write pilots. I had never written one before. And I just tried to become a better writer, like draft after draft. And I did the Ryan Murphy Half Foundation program. I did the CBS Writers Program. I did a bunch of every diversity program that you can think of. And eventually I was able to get a manager and agent and go through network staffing season, and I got my first staff writer job last year.
And I just want to say, Naomi and I met, this is really funny, we met, I was just moving back out to LA, we sat next to each other at this really small theater in Hollywood? Yeah, Hollywood, watching season 2 of Transparent, not just watching one episode. We watched all of the episodes. It was a binge watching thing with the cast and crew.
5 hours.
Yeah, it was. So we got to know each other pretty well. So yeah.
Hi. So I started as a theater director. That was kind of my way in because I wanted to do something creative, but I also had no idea that the TV writing existed because I'm first generation as well. And those are the jobs that we get to make actual money. So I became a theater artist. That makes no sense. But that's what called me. I felt like telling stories was the way to change the world. I was like, this is what's going to change the world. And I'm going to be a theater director. I went to Smith College. I knew that was going to happen. I went to Smith College. I studied government and women's studies and theater. I went to the Philippines on a Fulbright to study theater for a year. Then after that, I moved to New York. Told my parents that I was going to be a theater director, and my dad stopped talking to me. It's fine now. But it was but at that time, he was not happy with my decision. I was in the multicultural theater scene in New York. I worked with my theater company, Intar, and then through there, I went to grad school. I was at Tisch, NYU Tisch, and then I realized that I fell in love. My wife wanted to have a baby, and I was like, oh, I can't pay for that in slices of pizza that I'm getting from working in theater. So I wanted to transition into more traditional entertainment. I worked at NBC as a corporate person in corporate diversity, and that killed my soul because I wanted to do something creative. I moved to LA, worked in the diversity program department at NBC, and that was kind of my end. I I helped run the Writers on the Verge program at NBC. So I can answer any questions about programs if you have questions about that. But then through that, I realized that everything that I did in theater I could translate to television, and I started writing for TV then, even though I started writing for theater before. And I got into the CBS writing program, and after that, I got staffed.
Yeah, thank you. Real quick before I just want to say there's more seats, you guys. There are more seats. Come forward. Don't stand up. It's gonna be a long panel. So make sure you all have a seat. And if you want to stand back, that's cool too. I get it. Drinking the coffee from last night. I get it. Okay, so, yeah, I do want to. I was like, we did read it. Yes, thank you. Yes.
So I grew up in Windsor, Ontario, which is across the river from Detroit, in a blue-collar family. Both of my parents are Italian immigrants, so first generation. and that definitely, my dad still works at Ford, so very blue collar. It's not, writing is not a thing there. So I basically had to trick my family by telling them I wanted to be a journalist. So I went to the University of Western Ontario and studied journalism, but took a bunch of film. Oh, I went there so I could come out, really. I needed to get just far enough away from my Italian family so I could come out, play soccer, which was super fun. I went to a few classes. And then realized quickly, like, if I wanted to be a writer, I had to move to Toronto. So I did, which is terrifying for, Windsor's not a small town, and my family was like terrified because, Toronto's gigantic. There's lots of like burbs on the outskirts. Anytime there was a fire within 3 hours of where I lived, I would get a call from my Zia being like, "Are you okay? I heard there was a fire." So everyone was terrified. Nobody knew what I was doing. My parents still don't really understand what I do. But I went to college after my undergrad. I went to college in Toronto, and it was another 3 years writing, directing, producing. They taught you everything there, and I was lucky that I knew I wanted to write. And so because I was the only person who was like, I want to be a writer, they knew how to help me and who to put me with. So they hooked me up with an internship with a producer in Toronto as her assistant for a bit, and then she liked me, kept me on as her development person, and then 2 of the shows that we developed while I was the head of development were Rookie Blue and Saving Hope. So when they got ordered, it's like I won the lottery. I basically Forrest Gumped my way into a career in television. So I ended up in the Rookie Blue writing room for 6 years, and then kind of went back and forth between Rookie Blue and Saving Hope because I developed the show, so I already had a really good rapport with the showrunners and with the key creatives and stuff. So that's my story.
So one of the things that I am really interested in, because I've heard this a lot from a lot of people, is that writers' rooms tend to be like a therapy group in some ways. And I just want to know, how have each of you possibly navigated that coming from the queer community? Have you been out as a writer in the writer rooms? Are there times where you felt unsafe or, like, I don't want to talk about, now you're on the L Word. That's just, and you're on Wynonna. Come on. There's no reason. There's no reason. But other shows, was that ever an issue? Did you ever, feel that was an issue?
I was really, really lucky. I had a really great first-time experience. I worked for a diverse showrunner. She filled her room half with people of color, half women, and I was not the only queer parent in the room. I was one of 3 queer parents in the room who were also of color. So it was a very unique experience.
She had a great room.
I had a great room with awesome people, and I feel really lucky, but I was able to be myself and out the entire time.
For me, I think my first staff writer job was on a multicam CBS broad comedy, and to be completely transparent, most of the writers were straight white men. So that was a very specific experience. I was out, and everyone accepted me, and it was a great experience. But now I'm in a much smaller room. It's a show for BET, and it's Lena Waithe's show, and so it's 6 people in the room, and I am the only non-black writer, and I am one of 3 queer writers. And so she's really made an effort to try to hire people who have these authentic experiences and to really put your heart out there and to really mine your story. And even if you cry in the room, she thinks that's a beautiful thing because that's how you access emotion and that's how you infuse those authentic stories into the script, because that project is so special to her. She's been developing it for 6 years. So I feel very lucky. I feel like I've had 2 very different experiences. Both experiences, everyone has been very nice to me in the room, but there are different types of rooms.
It's funny, I know who ran your room. Wonderful, great room. I know Lena because she was, when she came out here, she was my assistant. She was a hoot. She was not a very good assistant. Oh, she knows. She knows.
It's a safe room.
Yeah, I've had a bunch of different rooms. I've been lucky because I did Girlfriends, which was a very cool room. It was run by a woman of color, and there were, I actually met my, well, now my ex-fiance, but I met her on that show. So there was one other queer person on, but it just, that was a very safe room. But I wasn't out. I mean, I met her, we did this thing where we got a dog together, and we didn't say anything, but then I shared a housekeeper with someone, and so apparently the word got out that we had this dog. So then our thing was, can't friends get a dog?
Not usually, no.
Because we weren't in the same place, but it was like, I can't have this dog by myself, so we're just sharing a dog. So then the next thing that happened is we bought a house together, so we still didn't say anything. And then word got out about the house, and we were like, can't two friends buy a house together? And they were like, not. Yeah, the dog needs both its moms. And we still didn't say anything. It was so much speculation about what was happening because my then ex-fiance, that speaks to therapy later on.
Yes.
She'd been married when we met, but no, wait. to a man, and but like they got divorced, and then once she was single, then we got together. So there was, but yeah, it's my type. So that was the whole thing, because I thought there was no chance, and then she got divorced, and I was like, there's a chance. And then we got the dog and the house. So then we were kind of, but I still wasn't saying it. And even rooms after that, because I worked on like Sherry's show in New York, Sherry Shepherd show in New York, and a few other shows like the State of Georgia, Ravens. So these are all shows that were not as diverse, a lot of straight white men on these shows. But I still, and there were always maybe another queer person in the room, and I felt envious of that person because those people were, talking about like life at home and their partners, and I still felt like, I don't know. Here's an example. When the first L Word came out, I was tortured because I was like, I don't think that's me, even though I'm sitting on the couch next to something. It was crazy. So, but we would watch it and I think, is that what it's supposed to look like? But they're so out and open, and I'm not. We're just kind of living like these two lesbians tucked in this house with this dog, but we're not talking about it. And so I still didn't talk about it. I was like, if you don't know, you just don't know. Even with my family, I'm like, well, it's kind of obvious, guys. But we weren't talking about it. So just recently, on Insecure, I think it's when I felt the most comfortable. There were 3 queer people in the room, and then it's just it was so comfortable and such a family. And I kind of made this transition while I was on that show, because I was there for 3 years. So I made some mind transition or emotional transition, that I became this person who didn't talk about it to a person who only wanted to talk about it.
You had a lot of catching up to do.
I did. Suddenly it was like I wanted rainbow this and everything. I wanted every flag. I just wanted everybody to know. And now, since being on the L Word, it's because now I have a room full of, there's not a straight white man in sight. The room looks like the characters you will see. We call it like I think we're trans, pans, bis, and lesbians. That's all that's in there. All colors, all everything. We're everything, and we're staffing and crewing the show the same way, with directors. There's no straight white men directing. Marja Lewis Ryan is amazing, and she wants the show to reflect not everything, because we can't do everything, but what we do have, just to be as authentic as we can. And that room has been the most inclusive. And I talk about therapy. That's all I do. Every day they sit and they go, "What now, Regina?" And I'm like, well, okay, this is what happened yesterday. Because I have so many years to like talk about it and get it out and be open about it. And so I hope that all the things we talk about in that room and all the experiences we had everything that we say will be reflected on the screen. So that's our hope, that people watch it and we can repair some of the mistakes of the past and move forward with a show that everybody's proud of. So. Sorry, I
I was out when I moved to Toronto, so I've always been out in the rooms I've been in. I had one season of Rookie Blue where there was a gay male writer on the show as well, and other than that, in 10 years, it took till 2018 for me to ever be in another room with a queer writer. And that was a young woman that I mentored at the Canadian Film through the Canadian Film Centre, who, when I had my brief foray, my 8 months of show running before I left, because I was like, this is bullshit, I brought her into that room because I obviously think it's really important to bring people up with you. The rooms I've been in have always been predominantly female, not predominantly diverse. We're making strides in Canada, but we do still have a big problem with diversity. And but the rooms I was in, they were very, like I said, female centric. Every showrunner I worked for was like a mom, so that was awesome, because there was no like, you know, what do you mean you have to go get your kid? Or what do you mean your kid's barfing and you can't come until 3? Or what do you mean Christmas concert? Like, and so I really, even though at the time I didn't have kids, I really appreciated that. And so Tassie Cameron, who ran Rookie Blue for 6 years, was always like, said, our rooms, it's like a one giant dinner party. Basically, it's like we've been on one giant dinner party for 6 years, which was amazing. As the only queer woman in the room with the queer character on Rookie Blue, Gail, I did feel a lot of the, you have to be the voice of Gail and you have to advocate for her story to be told authentically, which, I mean, I don't represent, obviously, all queer women. And so that was a bit tricky, especially because in the room it was very, everyone was really supportive, and like every day was a giant therapy session. We all, you know, there were marriages and divorces and kids and, you know, people who were trying to have kids. And so you do have to talk about it all, because otherwise, like, why are you doing the job? If you're not trying to drill down, even on a show about 5 idiots running around with guns, if you're not trying to drill down and like talk about, you know, universal issues and themes and stuff, and find the big beating heart of the show, why are you doing it? So, so yeah, that's and now I'm on Winona, which is insane. We have a lot of fun. I think it shows when you watch the show that it's a lot of fun in the room. And again, it's predominantly, you know, parents. I am the only queer writer on the show as of right now, but we have $4 to make our television show. And so our rooms are really small. So I went, you know, Rookie Blue was on ABC, so we had a giant room. We had 18 episodes, sometimes one season 22, which almost killed everybody. And now we are 10 episodes and a room of, you know, 5 or 6 sometimes. So that makes a difference in terms of who you can bring in. But it's all, I mean, I've never, outside of the room, I've had, you know, EPs and stuff. I've had to go to EPs and say, like, this story is really important, and they've been like, well, why do we have to keep saying she's a lesbian? And I'm like, well, because you're not letting us tell, we can't afford to bring her girlfriend onto the show for a whole season, so every once in a while it would be nice if she mentioned that. So that fight was always outside of the room, which sucked, but I mean, better outside than inside the room, I guess. So yeah, they've always been really safe spaces.
Fantastic. So I'll just break it down. So I live in LA, like some of these lovelies. I work LA. I don't know how many people live or have been in LA. Okay, so you know, going 5 miles is like going 2 hours. Yeah. Right? Okay, so I work in NoHo. I work in Culver City, live in NoHo, right? It takes forever. So I listen to a lot of podcasts. And one of the ones that I listen to is called Happier in Hollywood. It's by these 2 showrunners, Sarah Faye and Liz Craft. They're amazing. They just launched their new show, The Fix. which, well, there's a lot of, anyway, they're amazing. But one of the best episodes that I listened to was really about, they break it down, like how do you take these steps in your career? Like what happens? What happens when you're a writer's assistant? Where do you go from there? Because I think that's one of the things that people don't really know, what the career path, if this is someone who wants to go into TV. I mean, some people literally like go from whatever to showrunner. Like they haven't been in television, they're like, oh, I'm a showrunner, you know, but that doesn't happen a lot of times. And so what are the steps, I guess, in your career, like where you guys have gone through that?
Canada's a little different, I think. It's a pretty direct, like, unless you're somebody's kid, you start as a writer's assistant, and then you generally become the coordinator, and then you'll become a junior story editor, and then so that's basically what I did on Rookie Blue. I coordinated the first year, and then by the end of the 6 years, I was the co-EP. So that's kind of, it's getting harder now with smaller rooms and less scripts to offer, to incentivize, to bring up the kind of next generation of awesome new writers. So, but that's it's a very linear. Unless you like go to the Film Center, which is like the gold standard in Canada, the Canadian Film Center, and you come up with like a brilliant idea, like Tara Armstrong did with.
Mary Kills People.
Thank you, Mary Kills People, and
yes,
then
right.
you know co-create the show, and everyone everyone is universally acknowledges your genius, and then you move faster. But yeah, so it's a very linear process in Canada.
Yeah, I can think of, I was just sitting here trying to think of the different rooms and how the staff writers made it in, and it just because of where we are now, like Issa Rae, for example, it was a web series, and that happens a lot. Just people do their own web series, it gets noticed, suddenly studios are looking at it, networks are looking at it, that's one way. I've also, the same show, Insecure, all the writers' assistants, all the coordinators have just moved right, like the next year they've moved into the staff writer position. And that's also just, if you have the kind of showrunner that does that, like giving writers' assistants and coordinators opportunities to write scenes or cold opens and kind of seeing how they do it, and then moving those writers, moving them into the staff writer position the next season based on obviously the quality of the work, but it's been working for that show. I know because I know a lot of people are in Shondaland, and I know that's what Shonda does. You can't even be an assistant at Shondaland unless she's read your script, because her whole intention is to move people up, is to mentor people coming into Shondaland and she has so many shows that she does have an opportunity to put people on those shows. So I know people submit scripts just to be a PA over at Shondaland. And then of course it is also, our staff writer now on the L Word was Margie's assistant for years, and so she helped her with her scripts, and she was her assistant for a couple of years, and now she's sitting in that staff writer position. And the last thing is obviously meeting people. I mean, people go to panels, they go to conventions, they go all these places, and they try to, meet and have connections. And there's so many showrunners and writers who want to mentor people, especially, and I think it's in our community, we should do more. So I've been trying to do that because there's a lot of voices that need to be heard. So you're doing the right thing. You're going, you're listening, you're trying to meet people. And the only other thing I can say is just write. Because I've had so many people, even after panels, after meeting people, and you say, well, send me, like, are you writing? Do you have something? And they're like, well, not yet, but I know I want to be a writer. Well, no, if you don't have any, because it is opportunity meets, what is it?
Yes.
Preparation is opportunity.
Thank you.
Yeah. And to have something with somebody, because you never know when somebody's going to say, well, let me read something. And you can't go home. I've also had people, and it's obvious, go home over the weekend. And so the script they send you on Monday, it's obviously something they started on Friday. It's like, come on. So yeah, just keep writing, and then just be prepared when somebody says, well, let me read your stuff. But those are the ways I can think.
Thank you.
Yeah, for me, I did not go the writer's assistant route. I was a PA and a production coordinator on commercials and features before I went to grad school. But in terms of the rooms I've been in, for example, the current room, our writer's assistant is going to be writing an episode, and she used to be Lena's assistant. And on Lena's last show, Boomerang, the writer's assistant was also Lena's former assistant, and she co-wrote an episode of Boomerang. And so I think it really depends on the showrunner, who is mentoring or who has that, who's operating from that place of wanting to lift other people up. My last show that I was on, the writer's assistants, we had two. They both co-wrote an episode, but one of them has been a writer's assistant for maybe 7 years. So it really depends. For me, I didn't go up that route. I have a lot of writer's assistant friends who have been promoted to staff writer. For me, it was mostly about writing pilots and getting better at writing. And I think the moment I wrote something that was very personal to me, that seemed very niche, it was based on my story of being a Japanese American queer woman, and the idea of coming out to my dad, and then my dad coming out to me as gay and stealing my thunder, which actually is like, someone would maybe like hear that and be like, that's so niche, no one's gonna read that, but it actually has been, the thing that has gotten me into so many rooms and gotten me into all the fellowships. And so I think, writing is a big part of it, because we don't really see the work that people put into, doing draft after draft after draft, on weekends, early in the mornings. And so I think that's actually the most important thing. Yeah.
I mean, writing for sure, but I just also want to plug the diversity writing programs at the networks. It's a double-edged sword. Sometimes, but overall the programs I think have done a lot to help get rooms more diverse. I think maybe the program should evolve a little bit, but it's been a great tool, and all the networks have them. And I think when you apply. If you don't get in the first time, you should apply again and again and again, because I work the back end of that system, and you get points every time you apply. Like, they want to see that you're getting better, and so they're going to track people who apply more than once. So that's a big thing, is apply more than once. But I think network programs have been really helpful.
Yeah, on that note, this is more technical, but this question comes up a lot. Spec or pilot? Spec or pilot? What do you guys think? Both? Yeah.
Have both.
Yeah, for sure. Most
and
of
do people know what that is? Okay. Yeah.
Most of the fellowships, except for the ABC program right now, require a spec and a pilot.
Yes.
So yeah.
Great. And so we will open questions in a bit. I just want to ask a couple more questions. What's the best writing advice that someone has ever given you in your career? Uh-oh, sorry. I stumped the panel.
The first bit of writing advice I got was stop writing queer stories, because people are only going to think that that's what you're going to get pigeonholed into that specific. So clearly that's not the best advice, because so much opportunities I've been given, and I think a big part of, although I've been trying to work with Emily for a while now, but it's only helped me to be, and I know writers feel weird about the diversity programs a lot of times, because they don't want to be the person who ticks the box, and then go in as that, and go into a room and be seen as, oh, you're just here because of that. But tick the box. Go be in the room, and when you're in the room, show them how much you deserve to be in the fucking room. So I think I just figure out why you're there. What is it that you have to say? And to echo what Naomi said, put yourself on the page. It's terrifying, but that's what's it's gonna be what gets you seen, and what makes someone connect to your story, and also is going to make the long hours, the crazy time away from your family, all of that worthwhile. So yeah.
One of my favorite novelists, Edwidge Danticat, writes in one of her novels, the trees gave themselves in sacrifice for the pens and the paper that you're writing on. And so for me, I always think about that, because you're racked with self-doubt like 80% of the time, and you're like, is this good? I don't know, I'm gonna trash it. I should have. And there's a lot of insecurity, I think, if you're a writer, and there's fear because you're putting yourself on the page. But then when I think that like our stories need to be heard. And the trees did get this piece of paper here is because of this tree. And I can't be silent. Like it's not an option because our communities need to have our stories heard.
I can come back.
I'm trying to think of the best. Write what you know. Don't be afraid. Trust yourself. And don't pack the box in your office just yet. Just give them a minute. Okay.
I would say someone told me never to write to trends because a lot of times, people will be like, oh, okay, autobiographies are really in, or limited series about this, or period pieces are really in, so you should write to that. And someone told me, that people don't really know what they want until you give it to them. And so I guess, just find that story that really resonates with you, whether it's personal or whether it's something that you can't stop thinking about, that's sticky, that keeps you awake at night. I think that has been the most resonant advice I've gotten in the last 6 years.
I was just going to say, you read so many, especially when you're trying to staff a room or even just looking for who you're going to mentor. You get a lot of the same kinds of stories, and I am 100% more inclined to mentor someone or hire someone if the script gives me something I've never read before, even if it's not necessarily for me or about my experience. I know I can write my experience, so I would like to see yours, and I think that's the thing that's going to make you stand out, is being your authentic self and telling your authentic story. So the more and if you feel like you can't do it, be brave. Like, we need to hear your story.
Oh, I do want. But when it comes to specs and pilot, the pilot should be something that you feel you can write that's personal to you. The spec should not. The spec should feel seamless. Like if you read a spec of any show, it should feel like that's something you could watch that could be on the air. I mean, the spec is not your chance to reinvent the wheel, because that's not what anybody's reading it for. So just keep that in mind.
Can I ask a question about specs? I take your point. I've heard stories of people writing a very special episode of that specific show as the thing that gets them in the door. Like, how does that rank?
It depends. Sometimes depending on who reads it, like if you're reading it and you're kind of familiar with the show, you just want to read something that you understand. If you're a really big fan of the show, then there's a chance that if you write the very special episode, somebody gets it. But that's also a chance you take. You're rolling the dice. I get what you're saying.
Great, thank you. That's a wonderful question. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. No. I'll appreciate it. So one of the things I want to bring up, and obviously this is a convention founded by fandom, the L word. Back in 2004, internet was still in the baby years, and there was no social media. I think there was MySpace, maybe Friendster. I'm totally dating myself. But what I really love and what I really appreciate is how you've been reaching out on Twitter and saying, okay, what do you guys want to see? What do you want to talk about? Is that something that came from you? Is that something in the room that you guys are like, we need to reach out? Because there was such, there was Lessons Towards, there was all after Ellen, there was the chart that came about, but it's different now.
Yeah, we're really trying to reach and see, because like I said, we're correcting a lot of things. We're just wanting to know what people think, what people want to see, and I do take because I sit there and I read them in the room, and of course it was a lot of Who Killed Jenny.
Is she coming back? No, I'm kidding. Okay.
What happened to Tina? So we're just, as we move forward in stories, and we take them in and we talk about them in the room, and then we discuss things with Showtime. And I know the one thing that I really wanted to do is is because we talk about it in the room all the time. It's like when we talk about episodes and then we keep talking, we're like, there should be a show after the show.
People are freaking out when you posted that.
Yeah, and so we've been really pushing for it, so we're feeling really good about it, and how we want to do it and what we want to talk about and what platform it will be on, and like what people to bring on, whether it's cast or people who are fans of the show, and kind of doing almost like an Andy Cohen thing, but because it's L Word and we think it's, you know, we're trying to do, like, bring back something that everybody wants to flock to, everybody can see themselves in. So we're really excited that, hoping this is going to happen.
I hope it happens, because I think, I mean, we were just talking about back in the day, if people were around back then, there were L Word screenings. Like, I did one at Falcon in LA, and I swear to God, you guys, I don't know how many people went to the L Word screening parties who were around back then. Okay, did anyone go to the LA ones? Okay, 300 women every Sunday. I was like, I would be at the door, I'm like, holy crap, there's 300 women here on a Sunday at 9 o'clock in LA. And they would be yelling at the screen like it was a freaking football game. It was amazing. And at some point, Eileen would come, cast would come, and they would sit in the little VIP. I mean, they would come out and, you know, hang out with people. But I was just like, I wonder how they, you know, it was like, I wonder how they felt, especially Eileen, you know, because people would be booing at Jenny. And then we're like, and I'm like, how does she feel about that? You know, I mean, it was just a really, I mean, it was a very, obviously in person, and we're gonna do that tonight with Killing Eve, which I'm so excited about. But like, I think that's really interesting, in that it's gonna be really interesting to see what happens now that you have these platforms to really engage with the fans.
We're already expecting, because sometimes we get to a point in the story and we're like, well, that's going to be a whole thing. That's going to be a Twitter thing. We'll see.
If you need to crowdfund the after party, I'm sure we could do it in 5 minutes.
Oh, done. We could do it like by the time this ends. And speaking of that, like, I know, obviously, Wynonna, you guys, I'm sorry, you guys, you have the most intense fandom. Intense. Really, it's amazing. You guys are amazing. Like, absolutely amazing. It's really heartening to see that. As someone outside of that world, it's really heartening to see how much the fans love the show and how much they're fighting for the show. And one day at a time, too. Like, how much you guys are fighting to keep these shows on the air, which are so important, and, you know, we need that representation. How much does the fandom affect the writer's room? Or can you say?
Oh, God. Somewhere Emily's ears are burning. We pay attention to what the fans have to say. Of course. I mean, we're doing it for them. The show, this little dinky Canadian show shot in the freezing cold of Calgary, would not have been on for more than a season if not for the fandom. Like, it's insane. And I was a fan of the show before I came on board, so they were like, get ready, because when your episode airs, Twitter's just gonna go nuts and you're gonna get inundated with, like, you know, these messages, and that's exactly what happened. And it's really daunting to step into, but also, like, I feel truly blessed to be a part of it. You gotta give the fans what they want, and that doesn't necessarily mean the way they think they want it. So you can't, like, the tail can't wag the dog in a way. But I think at the end of the day, like, everybody trusts Emily, like myself included. I mean, that was the first genre show I'd ever worked on, and I went into the room and I was like, are you sure we're gonna tell this story? Yeah, okay, I guess he's a gnome and he came to life and his wife got smashed and he was super bummed, and so then he wanted to marry either Nicole or Wynonna and they had to choose who was gonna be his wife. I don't know, is that a good story? Is that a good genre story? I mean, maybe. You're very sweet. So we all just want to make, and I think that's part of what's so great about the show. I've never been on a show before where everybody making that show wanted so much to make Emily proud. The writers, the crew, the cast, it's like, you know, you got Melanie Scrofano hanging off of a cliff in -20, you know, Celsius. Like, I don't know what Fahrenheit. I guess you'd be on. Yeah, I guess you'd be dead if it was. Anyway, and so I think the fans are here for that. You know, we're all kind of just like want to do right by Emily, and I think that I hope the fans. It seems that way. Really trust her to tell those stories. And so, yeah, of course, like, I mean, there's days when we spend half the day reading what the fans have to say on Twitter, for better or for worse. And we just have to, but then you gut check those comments and you go, is this true to the show? Is it true to the characters? And at the end of the day, we are having as much fun making it as everyone's having watching it. So, and we want to keep that up. So, we do care. We just have to make sure that we're not just writing like fanfic, I guess. So there's a fine line.
No, definitely. I'm really bummed, and I'm sad to say that it was a scheduling thing. We screened this amazing documentary called United We Fan on the first day, and of course it went against Alexa panel. So. Very sorry about that. But if you guys get a chance to see it, I highly recommend it. What was so interesting, though, is that I can't remember what show it was. It was 2 male showrunners, and they were talking about, like, oh, we don't care about the fans. Like, it was just like, oh, we don't deal with them. Like, you don't listen.
I mean, if you're a gigantic CBS procedural, you don't have to care about the fans, I guess. Right. So that's a luxury that we don't have.
Yeah, but it was just really interesting to hear that, you know, the different perspectives. I'm like, you know.
But why would you want to make a show where you don't care about the fans or the fans don't matter? I don't understand why anybody would want to work on that show or make that show.
It's exactly.
Be surprised.
Well, it's all of the millions of dollars, maybe.
Yeah, right. So with that, I know I'm so sorry. You guys are amazing. We have like 15 minutes, and I want to see if I would open it up to questions. Are there questions? I'll come around with a lovely microphone. Oh, I know there's questions. Come on, you guys.
Who's going to be first?
So forgive me if you guys went over this, I'm not sure. Crystal, what's it like being in a comedy writer's room? Like, what is that atmosphere like?
Hi, Catherine. I actually am a dramedy writer, so it was really surprising that I was in a hard comedy, like sitcom room. And I mean, the show, I Feel Bad, is about an Asian working mom who has to balance her 3 young children with her life. And I'm an Asian working mom that has to balance my 3 young children with my working life. So it was just the right thematic show for me. And it was, I'm not used to it. I worked with stand-ups, and they are fast, and everything is a punchline, and it was, I was like reeling, and thank goodness I worked with kind people, because I can imagine working in a mean room. You would have been roasted if you're not that quick in a comedy room. But I was able to give my perspective as a mom of young kids, and I was able to come with family stories, so I felt useful as a staff writer, but it was terrifying being with people who are so punchy all the time. We'd go to lunch, and they were still making like punchlines about the lunch, because everything was and it was hilarious, but it was scary for me. And I know that in comedy rooms versus drama rooms, it seems like we work together most of the day, so we write everything together with the script up on the screen and people pitching jokes. So it's much more collaborative, or we'll get split up and then write scenes and come together and edit it together. So I know that that's very unique to comedy rooms.
I know there's a question over here.
You touched on this a little bit just now, but can you speak to what a day in the life, a day at work would be? Like when you come in, what you guys do, and how it all works from your 9 to 5?
Our day is different than theirs. You're in a room now?
Yeah. Well, my 2 rooms have been very different. So I also worked on a multicam comedy, a CBS show, and it was a very big room, 20 writers. and a lot of times there were a lot of stand-ups in the room as well. And you can't really get a lot done with 20 writers in the room, so a lot of time we will be split into 3 groups. And so in the beginning of the room, we would the showrunners would say, hey, this is what we're doing. We're going to be outlining episode 1, writing together a draft of episode 2, and then the third room will be kind of blue sky brainstorming other episodes. And so for most of the day, we'll be doing that and then come back to the bigger room and kind of discuss and pitch to, the 2 main showrunners, like what we came up with during the day. I would say in the room that I'm in right now, which is also a half hour, but it's a half-hour dramedy, in a very small room that's 6 people, we primarily stay together as one. And it's really like a therapy session, to be honest. We talk about what it means, because our main character is a queer woman of color. And so we talk about what it means to be queer. What haven't we seen on TV? We haven't really seen 2 studs in a relationship, 2 women of color who identify as studs. And we're like always asking, what haven't we seen on TV? What are we looking for? What do we want to see on screen that we haven't seen our whole lives? So it's a very different process. We're not pitching jokes at this point at all. So it's more about mining our own lives at this point.
Hi, so quick question. What's your viewpoint on managers and agents, especially with the WGA situation that's happening right now? Is this a big question? I'm so sorry.
Elephant in the room. Elephant in the room.
Thank you so much for coming. That's all the time.
I think we need another 2 hours for this.
We don't have agents right now. Yeah.
Are you guys okay? We'll see.
Yeah, we'll see. Yeah, I mean, I had to do the hard, we signed the letter. I had to do the hard call yesterday because I love my agents, but we stand with our union.
Yes.
And so a lot of agents were fired yesterday until they signed the code of conduct.
So how does that work? It's because staffing season is going on right now, right?
This is how it works. Hi, Regina.
Yeah, hi.
Actually, I don't know what I do right now, and I'm open to be staffed.
You know what? I do want to touch on that. I do want to touch on that though, because I don't know if you guys if following stuff on Twitter. Obviously, you're following. There's been an amazing outpouring. A couple people have basically put out, "Hi, I'm a showrunner, and I'll read your script if you're a WGA member." And just seeing that thread, amazing. And how many people at high levels are like, I want to read your script, and they're like, I'll read 1 a week. And then some people are like, no, I'll read 2 or 3. It's just been so lovely to see how inclusive that community has been over the past few weeks with all this madness.
I mean, we were lucky enough because our room started 2 months ago. So, we're all, in there for a minute. But obviously it was strategic because staffing season is happening, and there are a lot of people, especially lower level writers,
right,
with scripts in hand. Like, how do I get now? What do I do? Because I don't have an agent anymore. How do I get my script seen? So, yeah, there's a script submission thing through the Writers Guild, and just trying to find somebody. If you have a manager, it helps because managers are now taking the reign from the agent to submit scripts. But we're all waiting to see kind of how it shakes out too. So because it just happened yesterday.
Yeah, I mean, we could. That's like a 3-hour panel. We could go on and on about that. Question up here.
You mentioned earlier the importance of having other works available. So when folks say, "Hey, we can't use this. What else have you got?" Or, "Sure, I'd love to read your stuff, even though you look crazy. What have you got?" So separate from the things that you are actively working on with your gigs right now, how many other files are sitting on your hard drives that you know that you're never going to use, but you're like, okay, I'm going to try this thing. I'm going to try this thing. I'm going to work on this type of thing. Like, just give me a ballpark figure for each of you. This is extremely relevant to me right now. Give me a ballpark figure of how many things you've got sitting in the hopper, and you're like, okay, I worked on this thing, maybe that might work.
I'm not sure if this answers it because I guess I do have things I'm working on. I have gay rom-com I want to do, and so I have
more.
Yeah, and I have another like late in life, like lesbian dramedy I want to do, but I'm also at the same time in the hopper. Right, I'm a crazy person right now because I am writing Sister Act 3.
Yes! I saw that and I was like, wait, is that real? That's amazing.
With the ex. Oh, that's fun.
I know. Good stories.
Yeah, it's good stories. Yeah. And then I have Wanda Sykes and I doing a multicam for Netflix. So
fantastic. Anyone else want to answer?
I have about 5 or 6 things that I'm like 2 that I've written, 1 that's in an outline, and they're all different. Like one's a half-hour comedy, 1 is a 1-hour drama that no one will ever make, certainly in Canada. One's a feature, and then a couple things that I'm developing like as a 1-hour drama. But I've been working a lot, and I have a young family, so those things are getting written very, very, very slowly, if at all. But yeah.
I don't have anything that official, but what I'm working on for myself is I have a pilot that I need to turn into a feature. I have a pilot that probably that isn't quite working, so I need to do a rewrite on. It's finished, but I need to do a rewrite on. And then I have something that's in a pitch document that I'm want to start to try to write too. So I have multiple things that I'm working on, as well as the material that I can send out for staffing.
For me, I'm writing a feature that's inspired by my family, and I'm also a filmmaker, so I just finished up shooting a documentary in Tokyo about a man who is in love with his sex doll, and they've been in a relationship for 8 years. So, I mean, it's a variety of different projects.
Yeah, it is.
8 years. A lot of stuff going on. But yeah, I think it's important for me to, when you are a lower level writer like me and Crystal, when you're on a show, you're there to service the showrunner and the show and their vision. You're using your skills and whatever talent you have in order to support their vision. And so on hiatus or times when I might have free time, it is really important for me to have something, however small it is, whether it's a feature or a short film, in terms of like continuing to work on something that truly comes from my own heart and my own vision in terms of continuing as an artist.
So yeah, we got a lot of stuff on our laptops.
That's good, and no end to stories. Well, I wanted to thank you all for being here. I think this was such an enlightening panel, and thank you for being so open and honest with all of us. So, thank you.
Thank you guys for coming.